Welcome to today's episode. It is December 15th, National Cupcake Day. You are listening to a podcast where we've reviewed Noventa y Dos series in 2024, and with the holidays in full swing, we are here to recognize our collective top 10 shows and top 10 episodes of the year. If you had to guess, how many shows do you think we've completed? And by that, I mean we reviewed either the full season or we watched the season afterwards. And it doesn't have to be finished, like if we are in the midst of finishing a series because it is still on air.
I would probably say something like, I think I've watched like 10, maybe 10 to 15, somewhere between that.
Out of the 92 together, we've watched 26. And I would go through them, but I'm afraid that some of them are actually going to end up on our best ofs.
We can do that afterwards.
Sure. How many of those reviews do you think we've had positive to negative?
Oh, well, I think I've gone pretty negative this year. I think I have.
So you think there's more negatives than positives?
Yes, I do.
There's 53 positives and 39 negatives. I counted in the negatives anything 5 out of 10 or less.
Right. Because 6 we consider passing. Yeah.
Well, I don't know if there's passing or not. I consider 5 to be a show that is just average as it can possibly be. And I would not recommend just because it's like anything else that's on TV, right? So what do you think of this year's crop of TV as a whole? Do you think this was a better year for TV or a worse year?
I think it was a worse year.
Yeah, I feel like it was pretty mid.
It started off pretty great with stuff like Shōgun, I think, because that came out I think February.
Right.
And then there's probably been some other things here and there. But like last year we had Last of Us.
We also reviewed a lot more shows last year. We had more time on our hands. But 92 is nothing to shy away from. You got 16 Netflix shows, 16 Disney/Hulu, 13 Max, 12 Apple, 8 Peacock, 7 Amazon, 4 Paramount/Showtime, 2 Roku, a bunch of other like I think we did like 3 CBS. Didn't get into the ones. But yeah, honorable mentions, shout outs. I don't actually have honorable mentions from ones that we reviewed, but there were shows that I just happened to watch that didn't fall into this year's camp. One of which was last year, very end of the year, December 21st, they dropped the 2nd season of Dr. Death. And the episode that I'm talking about is 191. That was season 2, episode 5. That is a banger of an episode. It is deeply depressing, but probably one of the best hours of TV that I've seen all year. And I just wanted to point that one out because it doesn't count technically. And then a show that I would also recommend, which came out a couple years ago, but that I just discovered because it was on Netflix, Pantheon, which is about AI uploaded intelligence, really cool story, sort of an anime vibe, but like Invincible type anime.
I have a show that we were supposed to do on Netflix as well. They came out this year, incredibly popular, but Baby Reindeer.
Little Reindeer?
No, it's Baby Reindeer.
Yeah, it is Baby Reindeer.
I mean, like, no, just it's based on a true story, but I thought that the acting in that was just amazing.
I watched some of that. It's pretty cringy, though. Like, there's some moments where it's really hard to get
It's hard to watch.
Hard to watch, yeah. So kind of like 191. And like I said with the Worst Of podcast last week, each of us has a list of 5 best shows, 5 worst shows. We combine them. I hope you've checked your list twice, because that's very important this time of year. And I should say St. Dennis Medical, hilarious show, didn't make it on this list.
It didn't make it on the list.
Yes.
Okay.
And so I do have some honorable mentions. And Star Wars Skeleton Crew. I thought about it, but I think there's a little bit too much recency bias. So
I do have ones that if you are not on your list in either the episodes or the shows, I'm going to be very surprised about.
We'll talk about that after then. Do you want to start with mine or yours? I think in the worst ofs we started with mine. So go ahead and give me your 5th best episode of the year.
English teacher, the pilot, the cast is incredibly likable. I don't think that there's one character that I dislike. It's the dialogue is fast, funny, it's authentic, it feels very real. The pilot's synopsis was Evan, a gay teacher at a high school, gets in trouble with the school for kissing his boyfriend in public. I've become a huge fan now of Brian Jordan Alvarez just from this series. I think this is the first one I've ever watched with him as the creator. But yeah, number 5, because for a show that checks off a lot of boxes, it's not afraid to disapprove of some aspects of PC culture, which is kind of different as well. Like,
I don't think it's a show that could have existed 15 years ago.
I agree.
Like, I think the outrageous LGBTQ humor in it is kind of like something that's been more and more accepted over time. And so that's cool that it made it on there. So number 5 for me, I will say, is the Netflix show Chaos. And it's the pilot episode that we did with that. It's like this year's Mrs. Davis, where it was a completely original concept, except for the fact that they were using Greek gods and Jeff Goldblum was playing Zeus Hugh Grant was originally supposed to play his character, but he went on and I think he was doing Heretic at the time. And I think it worked out for both actors.
So, yeah, I was going to ask what you thought of Jeff Goldblum, because I remember you started off that podcast and you were saying how you weren't always the biggest fan of his acting. Like, a little bit of him goes a long way.
Well, when he's playing a narcissistic god, I think that kind of fits his personality that he shows in other things, and it worked well. But it wasn't just him. It was the fact that I think they made a song for the first episode that actually was rather catchy. It seemed to take place not only in the real world, but also in hell and then in the clouds. And then this like weird limbo, purgatory. And so you could make an argument for the show in general, because I did continue to watch it. But the first episode, I think, is the most intriguing, and I think it deserves to be. It also took the place of Disclaimer. I was going to put Disclaimer as my fifth best episode, but I watched the rest of that series, and like I said, the worst of it was one of the most disappointing watches over time. So it actually kicked it off. Number 4 for you.
Nobody Wants This, the pilot. An unexpected relationship blossoms between a rabbi and an agnostic woman.
I'll stop you for 1 second. Yeah. December 15th. That's today. That is also Adam Brody's birthday.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, he's turning 45.
Well, Adam Brody and Kristen Bell, I mean, their charisma in this show, their chemistry, it's off the charts.
Their Riz? Yeah.
Not there is, even though we did talk about at the beginning of that review, there were so many like thirsty articles or thirsty.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Articles.
Sexy Rabbi or something.
It's charming. It's light. It reminds me a lot of the film 50-50, where it's taking a kind of serious topic about how people view interfaith marriages, interfaith relationships, but it's doing so in a delightful way. Again, I think that the cast is great. I forgot who Adam Brody's brother's name is in that show.
The guy from Veep.
The guy from Veep, yeah. He's funny as well. I think that it's only like 10 episodes, but it's very easy to get through. That's one of the ones that I'm in the midst of watching right now. But overall, yeah, I thought that the pilot was great. And I wouldn't even have that much of a problem if you were to put that series on my best shows, but I think that just shows how better the shows are this year.
Yeah, you are going against what you said
Better
earlier.
the shows are than Nobody Wants This, I should say.
Okay, so rom-com, 2 of them in a row, kind of. Well, comedy aspect.
Yes.
So I wonder how many of the remaining 3 that you have are comedies.
That'll change.
This is definitely a comedy. Daily Show, the return of Jon Stewart, which happened at the beginning of 2024, I think in February. I could say that it did this season's worth of Comedy Central's Daily Show was what I expected it to be, which was really, really funny. But I don't think it gets better than the first thing I think he said was like, now where was I? Mm-hmm. And so he fit right back in with the crew. That's why it's gotten a second season of him returning.
They
were talking about the Super Bowl. They were talking about Indecision 2024, just highlighting the coverage of the election. And I think his interviews in the preceding episodes too, with the FTC chair and Mark Cuban, like just genius. But again, this first show was like something special about it. So that's episode number 4 on the list of top episodes of the year.
I am very glad he's back. I think I said in the problem with Jon Stewart episode that he's probably my favorite late night host. I'm a little surprised that the episode made onto your best episode list, because I agree that episode was good, but just overall, I think this season it's been nice to have him kind of back in the news cycle.
But if you were going to pick one of the best episode out of all of them, it's The Return. Yeah, I would say. So that's why it's there. Okay, so number 3 for you.
The Walking Dead, The Ones Who Live. What happened to Rick all this time? It finally explains what happened there, and then we get his hand being cut off in the first 10 minutes of the episode, something that the original show didn't even do.
But that the comic had.
That the comics did very, very early on. But now he has a cool, like, knife hand. He's almost semi-superhero. Frankie Quinones makes a guest appearance. That was really cool. I wasn't expecting that. And then just learning what really did happen to Rick. I felt like it was original enough, but it also felt familiar enough to still be The Walking Dead. I would have preferred the 3 movies that were originally planned, mostly because I'm not a big fan of where that episode ended off. Kind of like
it's just going to be the Michonne and Rick story.
Yeah,
you gave that episode an 8.5.
I really would have just preferred had we had just, again, Rick just throughout that whole series. Just give us the Rick series. Maybe Michonne can show up at like the last 2 episodes. So the potential for the series was definitely not as high as some others that I had this season, but the episode itself I thought was good enough to be my number 3.
You also said at the time that it was a different type of villain than you were used to, and that the zombies were particularly cool.
Yeah, the zombies were a lot better, because by the end of The Walking Dead, if you remember, I mean, they had decayed so much that the kill kills were so lame. Here, it was something different where the zombies were kind of scary to see again.
Fresher corpses?
Yes.
Okay. 6.5 that one got for me. So I wasn't as big a fan, and mostly because it is just going to be at the end a Michonne and Rick love story. They've now reconnected, and I didn't think that it was going to keep up. But yeah, the first episode had its perks. My number 3 is kind of an interesting one because we reviewed the first episode of Kiteman, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Very, very good. Kiteman, hell yeah. That's the name of the full show. It used to be Noonan's, and then they switched it over. And really, it's not just about Kiteman. It's also about Golden Glider. I want to say that the first episode was great because it did introduce us to the world. It was hilarious. I hadn't really watched Harley Quinn like you had. Poison Ivy and Harley Quinn do make appearances in the first episode.
Was this the first DC animated show that you had seen?
Like fully?
Yeah.
It may be, unless you're talking about ones that came out a long time ago. I mean, I still remember Batman Beyond.
I was talking more about the James Gunn. Yeah.
Yeah, the James Gunn universe. I didn't even know how many he's made at this point. But I do want to also focus in on the 4th episode. I think the 4th episode is actually the best of the series. And so if I can, that's the portal potty. It's where they realize that there's a time machine in the bathroom. And so anytime they go back, and we got a backstory for Golden Glider in that, and Bane falls in love. And there's just like so much that it deals with in this ridiculous premise where you have a toilet on top of a bar that teleports you to like 92 or something like that. And so I just want to say that is hilarious. And that's my 3rd favorite episode. Yeah.
All right. So my 2nd favorite episode this whole year was the Uzumaki pilot. I think I said last week that Uzumaki was one of the most disappointing show this year, but it's only because of how good this pilot was. The animation is great for it. It was able to capture the environment of the graphic novel perfectly.
So you had an episode on your worst of and best of?
Well, I had the series on my dishonorable mentions. And then here I have the pilot, which I think is the only time that's ever happened with my ratings. But yeah, the environment laid out was great. It was unsettling. It captured the horror so well. Had the 3 other episodes been as good as this one, we would be dealing with one of the best animes of all time. I sound like a broken record because I said that so much, but it's only because it's true. The animation is just pristine in this episode. It looks hand-drawn, looks perfect. And unlike the other episodes, it took its time. It only, I think it only went through the first 3 issues of the graphic novel, unlike the other ones, which tried to cram in like 7 through 10 issues.
So like in this show, people get obsessed with spirals, and then this town is like slowly corrupted. But there's that girl in the first image where one of her eyeballs is completely turned into a spiral,
and that's at the end of the first episode.
So that was in the first episode.
Yes.
And it's kind of like a toilet where it pulls someone in, just like Kiteman. So I was just drawing that connection. Yeah, your number 2, right? Or no, that was
my number 2.
Okay, so my number 2 is Boy Swallows Universe, the pilot to that. I read the book, autobiographical novel by Trent Dalton, and the first episode really honors the story but changes it enough to work with the television universe. You feel the same feelings that you felt when you see this kid going through so much of his childhood, and the series kind of drops off. It does not stay as good throughout. Like it kind of takes it destroys the villain of the series and kind of neuters them a bit so that it can like get by in 6 episodes. But the first episode retains enough of what made the book so successful that it really deserves to be here. And it's one of those few times that I see a story adapted in a way that I almost prefer the television series, at least in the pilot.
Wow.
Kind of like how you would liked Uzumaki just as much as you enjoyed the comic in the first episode.
Boy Swallows Universe, that's a show that's also kind of hard to watch as well.
It requires a little bit of patience. Both the book and the TV show does. Yes, because he writes it kind of in flowery language, definitely from a kid's point of view at first, and then it kind of matures with the kid. And so when you're reading it as his first few chapters, the kid believes some truly outrageous things, like that there's a telephone that connects to a different world where he's like talking to himself in the future, and there's a bird that means like is significant. His brother has like superhuman abilities.
Reminds me very much of Room, or not The Room, but Room, the Brie Larson movie.
Yeah, a little bit, except his universe is not that bad, though there are some tragic things that happen. What is your number one best
Okay, so
episode of the year?
do we want to do number one or do we want to
Oh,
go
we can
best
go
shows?
over to the best shows. And so your number 5 best show. So fully.
Okay, this is definitely one that's hard to watch. I didn't even give it a rating, but Quiet on Set Season 1. This docuseries covers the ugly backstory of Nickelodeon child stars, and their stories. I thought that I should probably rate it number 5 because I didn't give it a rating, but there's an argument to be made that it could be even higher.
I'm
on my
surprised
list.
it's not just in your episodes and that it's not episode 3, right? Because that's the one where Drake.
That's the one, and that's the best episode of the series.
Drake
I think.
who?
Drake Bell. Drake Bell.
Where he comes out.
He gives his account
of Dan Schneider
and Brian Peck.
Yes. And how they were just monstrous to certain employees.
It's the whole show. Again, episode 3 is the most interesting because I did grow up watching Drake and Josh. In fact, it was one of my favorite
episode.
shows.
Real quick, what is it? Oh, go ahead. Yeah.
But overall, maybe aside from the last episode, because that's more just kind of an interview that was given a couple weeks later after the series became so big. But the 4 episodes, yes, it is very hard and shocking to hear a lot of what these people, these writers, these producers, these child actors mostly went through and the inappropriate behaviors that happened. But The Guardian gave the series 4 out of 5, has 100% on Rotten Tomatoes, and I would recommend anyone who can handle it to watch it because I think it's very important as well. But it does deal with some very triggering topics, sexual assault, and horrifying first-person testimony.
Not a comedy.
Not a comedy at all. No.
Okay. My number 5 is Masters of the Air. I read the book that it was based on. However, the book is more like an encyclopedia. It does talk about Gail Clevin and John Egan, but they're like minute. They show up in certain, like in the pre section of the book and also just like scattered throughout. But it's more, again, like an encyclopedia where you get different units of Air Force and stories about like famous people who joined the Army or politicians' kids who were in the Army and how race was tackled there. And instead, what they decided to do was kind of centralize it around the 100th Airborne or whatever. And the way that they shot it was, of course, going to be pretty monumental because it was the sequel to The Pacific and Band of Brothers. And one of the things that they did was they used the Mandalorian technology. I think you told me this at the time.
Right.
And they built these replicas of B-17s, and then they suspended them 50 feet above in the air with the actors attached so that when they were responding to flak, which is those little pieces of metal that would just like take out planes and then people would die immediately or like crash to their deaths, they could respond to seeing those explosions.
And they had the screens
realistically.
There. Yes.
That would be scary. Also sounds like a little bit of fun. I mean, as an actor, to be able to go and do that for your job. Anyways, I thought that the show as a whole looks the part and it's deserving of being one of the 5 best series of this year.
I knew that was going to be on your list. I thought that Dua Lipa's boyfriend, I don't remember his name right now, but I thought that he was the best. The acting's really good, but I thought he was the best actor on.
You didn't like
series.
Elvis?
No, I thought that Austin Butler did a great job. I was just saying, I think Dua Lipa's boyfriend is this.
Or the guy from Dunkirk, or yeah.
On a lighter note, my number 4 is Ted. It tracks John and Ted's antics back when John was in high school. It's renewed for a 2nd season, but it might be animated, they say. Aside from
the the 2nd season is going to be like cartoon?
Apparently, the production costs have been big. They're speculating that might be the case.
Okay.
But I gave the first episode a 6. I thought it was perfectly fine, but I watched the rest of the series, and it's hilarious. It's raunchy. There's a lot of gross-out humor, but it retains the same hearts that the film has. I say that as someone who enjoyed the films, but I didn't think they were amazing. There are only 7 episodes, and even secondary characters like Scott Grimes are really funny.
Would you consider it to be like the Young Sheldon, but like the more adult version of Young Sheldon?
Way more adult version.
Yeah, but like, they're going back in time. They're showing the origins. And the thing about Seth MacFarlane is he does so much all the time, right?
Yes.
But it really does seem like he enjoys this character. And so if they do a season 2, I think even if it was animated, hopefully it won't do the no activity thing where it just became a terrible show.
I'm hoping it's just speculation at this point, but I read something about it. Either way, though, Ted definitely on my number 4 list. What about you? What's your next
Bad
pick?
Monkey. So Bad Monkey is the Carl Hiaasen book. It actually has the monkey from George of the Jungle, from Dr. Dolittle, from so many, like that monkey is 30 years old. I think her name is Crystal. So that's really cool to see. However, the monkey is kind of just a side character, and the real star of the show is Vince Vaughn. Vince Vaughn plays a health inspector, actually a police department detective turned health inspector. He's been put on leave several times for his behavior. He is very sarcastic. However, he gets this, he has a friend who like gives him an arm that has been cut off, and that's what starts the mystery.
It's flicking them off, right? Or it's like it has its
No,
middle finger
that was disproven
No.
in the first episode. They just said someone was having fun with
okay.
it. Yeah, you didn't watch the show, obviously, but no, Zach Braff is in it, and it's really funny. And it keeps up, even though the first episode is probably my favorite still, because it introduces us into the world. I think it might get a season 2, and the mystery is it keeps up. And the guy who narrates it is pretty funny too. It kind of does that Shameless thing where every episode they give you a summary, and he gets more and more pissed off that he has to give you the summary. So just watch the show if you're going to watch it.
My number 3 is Hit Monkey, season 2.
Oh, so Bad Monkey to Hit Monkey.
Yeah, the monkey tries to escape the life of crime that was given in season 1. I thought that season 1 was fine, but season 2 really impressed me. I think it's better than season 1, and it gives me more depth to Bryce, who kind of helps
I
the
thought
monkey.
Hit Monkey season 2 would fall on its face. I thought they had done everything they possibly could, and by bringing Bryce back, it would be the equivalent of bringing Sam back in Supernatural.
And he's such a central part of the show too. Like I said, they gave him more story this season, but for a non-speaking animal, you care for the monkey, and the animation is fantastic for this thing. It looks glowing for an animated series, and even killed off some pretty big characters this season, so some definite surprises.
If I had to give it a knock, though, I would say not every episode is as like balanced. You know, it's not as consistent a show. Sometimes you get the really good ones, and then sometimes they're kind of the lackluster episodes.
That is fair, but I thought that there was a lot more good in this season than bad.
Yeah, I'm not challenging putting it on the list, but I do want to separate it between that and Hazbin Hotel, which I consider to be the best animated series of this year. I still think that her unaired pilot that she has on YouTube is better than the show, but the show is great. It's well-rounded, consistently funny. You've got the characters' recasted voices are also really good, Keith David included. Alistair's still my favorite character. They set up or ended season 1 with a banger. Like you really wonder where it's going to go, but it has to go somewhere. That's not going to come out though until the end of 2025, maybe even 2026. But anybody who hasn't seen Hazbin Hotel, it's better than Kiteman. It's better than all of these other ones. It's also a musical, surprisingly.
Loser Baby was my number 1 on Spotify, my number 1 song on Spotify.
It's the cringiest song of the whole entire thing. I don't know why you listen to it so much, but no, I think that did like break into mainstream like charts when it came out, which is funny. They got like a Broadway level cast to sing the songs.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so, yeah, what's your number 2?
The Gentleman, season 1. Eddie inherits a huge estate and weed farm. I watched the first half of the series at this point, but I enjoyed the pilot even
Guy
a little
Ritchie,
bit.
right?
Yes, Guy Ritchie. It's one of the few shows he's ever created, but man, does it still have the same type of humor. Chiron text on screen. It transfers very well to the small screen. Theo James reminds me of those cool characters who don't care. He's like a cross between Mr. In-Between and Ron Swanson.
And he's grown up from being 4 and Divergent, right? And then
4 and Divergent?
Yeah.
That was his character name?
Okay. Yes, I believe so. And then Effie is obviously from Skins.
Daniel Ings also from Sex Education. I like seeing him as kind of the cracked out older or younger brother. Yeah.
You can't tell?
I forgot. But honestly, yeah, it has the same type of action, same type of humor. It's a very, very good series. I gave the first episode 7.5, but really when you get more and more into the series, I think it just gets better and better.
So is that like best heistish series, or like how would you define a Guy Ritchie series? Best
it's
action,
best
comedy?
like dark comedy.
Right.
Yeah,
Okay.
something like that. But should we go back now? Wait, have you done your number 2 yet?
Nope. My number 2 is Shōgun. A lot of people's number 1. I'm surprised that the show has received as much patience that it demands and deserves, but it's just like Pachinko in that culture is front and center, and the writing is the best that you can probably hope for. The acting and the fact that the captain of the whole, John Blackthorne, yes. And then there's Mary San and Teranaga and stuff. Everybody plays their part to kind of, it's not a perfect adaptation of like the 50,000 page book or whatever it was.
Right.
Super long book. But they are making a season 2 to it. And episode 9 is the best. It's kind of like when you watch Game of Thrones and you want to just say, okay, that's written by like this is where all the things go down.
So
So I'm just giving people that little tidbit. Yeah.
With season 2, were you surprised to hear that it was going to have one?
Yeah. Really surprised.
So because they've gone through a lot of the book.
They
in
did go
season
through
1,
a
right?
lot of the book, right? And
So
they went through like the episode 9's worth of data. Yeah, so the Shōgun is definitely deserving to be up here, and I don't really need to defend it because everybody already sort of knows. It's kind of like the bear from a few years ago.
That's
Go
right.
ahead. And
So
your
going back to our number one
episode, yeah.
Yes, I'm in the minority on this one. This is a big shock. But the Charlie Puth Show, episode 2, fake news story goes viral involving Charlie Puth dating a grandma, causing Charlie to become a feminist
So he's playing
icon.
himself, but like an outrageous version.
Yes.
And say that again?
Yeah, a fake news story goes viral involving Charlie Puth dating a grandma, causing Charlie to become a feminist icon.
Okay, yes. And that was actually set up by his agent, who's played by Jonesie Ruby, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
And the episode was hilarious, has the most number of cameos. The plot is happily frivolous. There's not a hint of dramatic heft in this. It's the funniest episode of anything this year, and the ending use of "See You Again" was probably the most I've laughed at any part of any show this year. And I'm definitely in the minority because I went to the Charlie Puth subreddit expecting the reception of the show to be positive, and even Charlie Puth fans are saying they love his music but weren't huge fans of the show. But I will die on this hill. I thought that episode was really, really funny and really great.
Was it John Mayer who came out saying like he was actually dating the grandma and he was jealous?
Don't give too many away. Yes, but that's one of the cameos.
I apologize. Okay, my number one episode for the year. Actually, I thought that I would kick it off when I watched the rest of the show, and I said, this isn't as good. But Fallout episode 1, the end, I think that even though Sweet Pea, the same thing happened to Ella Furnell, where she stars in these live action things. They come out strong, like really strong and funny. And then like the end of Fallout, though, I don't know. It's also getting to season 2, so I can diss it. But like that is nowhere near as good as I thought it was going to end up. The first episode, though, far exceeded my expectations. Like they introduced not only the back, like I'll never forget the first scene with Walton Goggins.
Yeah, that was amazing.
Phenomenal. And then it's like whenever I think of Fallout now, that's where I go to. And then her introduction and the way they presented her growth in the first episode to where she becomes an explorer by the end. Great. And so in calling it the end is sarcastic. So I loved it all. And so that's my number 1. I don't want to give any more spoilers, just like you. So the number 1 show of the year for you is?
So my number 1 show of the year is The Day of the Jackal. Not really a surprise.
Oh, that's a recency bias one.
I mean, it made it in under the wire, just kind of like with The Agency on my worst of list. Here, it's the same thing. An elite assassin is given a job that makes him leave, that could possibly make him leave that life for good. The cops are on his tail, however. Eddie Redmayne is amazing in this series. He deserves the Emmy. I haven't seen Shōgun or any of the other things, but I will go out online and say that Eddie Redmayne deserves the Emmy whenever the next Emmy Awards seasons is. He being one step ahead makes the series addicting television. I was surprised to hear it was getting a season 2 because I think that they used up most of the material, but I'm excited about it. The action is great. The show looks cool. If you're not sure, just watch the first 15 minutes of the first episode, and I promise you'll want to watch the full series. It's timely, and it's just really great television.
When you say he deserves the Emmy, you say best Emmy or best actor?
Actor.
Best acting?
Best actor.
So would he beat, for a drama?
Yes.
Would he beat Colin Farrell in The Penguin? Because that is my number 1 show of the year. Who knew fat suits could work? It has been also like, it's not just Colin Farrell, but it's also Kristen Milotti and her version of that villain.
She's taking it this year also for an Emmy.
I mean, I didn't know that as an actress, like she's always wanted to be a Batman villain. So that's probably what's led her to be so good at it and so vindictive. The only part of the show that I'm not a huge fan of is Juice from Sons of Anarchy. Because like they keep on throwing him in there as
they've used his character and he's only in for like 2 minutes every episode, but he doesn't seem to have much of a thing. She's got like a weird,
I don't know, connection with him. It's kind of like when Daenerys would like have her love interests on the side in Game of Thrones, and you'd be like, can we get back to you being just like evil? So yeah, the Penguin, I didn't think I could feel sympathetic for him. I didn't think that I didn't like the Batman that much. I'm way into the Christopher Nolan camp, and like that's the real Batman storyline, and anything other is just a cheap intimidation or imitation. And so this, completely dismisses Batman, doesn't even matter about him. And it does make a character that I had really kind of never thought about and says, puts him in the focus. And I'm not sure if I'm in the camp where I'd be like, oh, he deserves to live because he's done so many horrible things.
Bad things.
But at least it sort of makes sense now. And it's not just as gross as Joker, where in that movie, you just are watching someone who's so mentally unstable, they can't even survive themselves. And they're just bullied and bullied and bullied. This person is responding to bullying, but he's also just like, it's his way of survival, you know? And the fact that he's kind of adopted this kid, episode 3 and 4, I think are pretty mainstays as like the best episodes of the year, but I didn't want to obviously put that in my best episodes. So yeah, Penguin is my number 1, and Eddie Redmayne's, not the agency, but
The Day of the Jackal.
Day of the Jackal is your number 1.
So the ones that I was sure you were going to have on your list were Fallout, Shōgun, Masters of Air, The Penguin, and then I was pretty sure Bad Monkey. I wasn't sure if Sunny was going to end up on your episodes list, because I know you didn't like the series that much, but I remember you were pretty high on the pilot, but those were the guesses that I had.
Sunny did end up being sort of a disappointment. You read the book to it, and you said that like they changed it.
By the end, it's not the same story in any way.
Yeah, and they did they did that thing where I think Apple was more interested in getting season 2 than it was in like giving you a nice conclusion to season 1 or giving you answers. The Gentleman of Moscow was probably one that it could have been. It almost made its way onto the list for best episodes, but I just didn't keep up with the series. And I realized part of that was because I just wasn't as interested in episode 1 as maybe I thought when I first watched it. Like, great acting by Ewan McGregor, but the show itself, I just don't know if it has that premise to demand a watch. Overall, let's go through our picks one more time real quick.
For best episodes, English Teacher, Nobody Wants This, The Walking Dead, The Ones Who Live, Uzumaki, and The Charlie Puth Show.
All right, Chaos, Daily Show, Kiteman, Boy Swallows Universe, and Fallout.
And then for best...
Oh, we should probably say the episode too. So Chaos, it was, are these all pilots? Is that why?
For mine, all were pilots aside from the last one, which was episode 2 of The Charlie Puth Show.
I would say Kiteman is more episode 4 if I can target it towards people. But yeah, everything else is kind of the pilot.
And then best shows, I had Quiet on Set, Ted, Hit Monkey, The Gentleman. Number 1 was The Day of the Jackal.
Masters of the Air, Bad Monkey, Hazbin Hotel, Shōgun, and Penguin. That's a tight lineup. Next year, what's the big show that you're waiting for? Is it the Daredevil return, the Born?
Daredevil Born Again?
Yeah.
I'm actually pretty excited for the Spider-Man animated series. It might be
that comes
awful.
out next month, I think. But like Charlie Cox, the reason I bring him up is he's also turned 42 today, I think, or 43.
So hold on, it's Adam Brody's
and
birthday
Charlie Cox's
and
birthday.
Charlie Cox's
and they're
birthday?
celebrating it together in the Poconos. All right. Anything else? We'll see you on the next episode. We'll probably get another one out before the end of the year for sure. Thanks for listening. We'll see you in the next one. Bye.
Bye.